again, pure progression, for the most part, those concepts are universal. Doesn't matter the coverage, but they're usually in what I consider your quick hitting drop back world where you're not sending the ball deep. And even within those pure progressions, there still are alerts, right? Like you're still going to have, 1, 2, 3 down to your check down, but oh, by the way, we have a go out there.
Welcome back to the Alert the Post podcast on the Coaching Coordinator Network. For today's episode, we have a very special guest. Mike LaFleur, the offensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams, is kind enough to join us today. Mike, how you doing?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, let's jump right into this. I got definitely some scheme stuff I want to chat with you about. I know you've been with a few different squads now in the NFL. You've called your own offense too. So I think your perspective on this stuff is going to be very valuable to a lot of coaches. The first topic I want to talk about is a real general topic regarding like quarterback reads. I think a coach of any level that you talk to, high school, college, the NFL, there's only so many concepts and pass routes that you can call, right? But a lot of the nuance is in how it's taught to the quarterback, how the quarterback can read it. Like you can find, I think last summer I went on a tour trying to ask as many people as I could how they read the arrow concept, right? So you got the arrow, the snag, and the corner. I think I got a different answer from everybody I talked to, right? Pro level, college level, and high school level. And everybody has their whys and how they do it and how it makes sense for their offense. So I think it's an interesting discussion. And I think you can learn a lot from talking about it. So one thing I want to pick your brain on, just because I know you have a lot of experience with the pure progression world. Bro, the overall philosophy behind it, maybe just give us a quick overview on that. And then what are some of the key coaching points when navigating that read system to the quarterback?
Yeah, I think from a philosophical standpoint, when people started going into more the pure progression concepts, it was just adjusting to the landscape of the league, and as defenses have just evolved into more and more coverages, showing too high, rotating late, like what coverage is it pre-snap? It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell sometimes post-snap, and sometimes post-snap, the coverage changes based on what the back does. Does he scat release? Does he run a, check down, check his protection and then get out? So, in that same call from the defense, but totally comes out a whole different way. So now I'm playing quarterback and I'm trying to play fast against, incredible pass rushers in this league. How can I play fast? How can I get the ball to my hands and without having to overthink anything? And that's where I think the pure progressions really kind of took off. It's fun. That's kind of, where you build a lot of your OTAs and training camp, concepts that go into your 2-minute type concepts, and you just get reps and reps and reps and reps. And so then when you get to obviously in season, these guys have banked so many reps on these concepts where it's, hey, I read with my feet. If one's open, I take one. I'm aggressive to one. If it's not, I read with my feet. I keep my base. I keep my rhythm, and I rip through it.
Yeah, no, I think you touched on some important stuff there. And there's one point I kind of wanted to elaborate on too, is you talk about coverages. I think a couple of years ago, the Chicago Catholic League here, just outside of Chicago, it's a very heavy 4-down quarters league, and everybody seems to play quarters differently. So if you tell your quarterback, hey, against this, this concept against quarters, we're going here, we want the ball to go here. Well, everybody plays it differently, and that concept's going to look different. So you got to really treat, okay, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, because you can't just make a blanket against cover 2, we want this, against cover 3, we want this. I think especially with quarters, you get more variability, but that's just a practical example of what you're talking about there.
100%.
Is there a situation where you've gotten in trouble with pure progressions where you're like, in this case, I wish we had made this a coverage read or something where the quarterback doesn't get to the backside quick enough? Is there a concept that you've thought about?
Yeah, I mean, you can always put on the tape and second guess yourself with that stuff. But again, pure progression, for the most part, those concepts are universal. Doesn't matter the coverage. They're usually in what I consider your quick hitting drop back world where you're not sending the ball deep. And even within those pure progressions, there still are alerts, right? Like you're still going to have, 1, 2, 3 down to your check down. But oh, by the way, we have a go out there. And if we got bumped man to man with a matchup we like, you're still making a decision pre-snap more times than not if I'm going to alert this. But hey, the moment I say I don't want anything to do with it, whether it be from a coaching perspective throughout the week or, in the moment with Matthew, Jimmy, and the quarterbacks we've had, the moment they say, hey, I'm just going to read this thing out. Hey, what's the timing of the play? What's my rhythm with it? And, again, I'm going to rip through the progression and I'm not going to pass up if one's open, I'm throwing them the football.
Good stuff. I was actually talking to one of my buddies yesterday. You just mentioned that I was interviewing you, and we're talking about the Rams offense or whatever. And he goes, "Don't the Rams run it up the middle a lot?" This is a guy who's not a coach necessarily, right? And he's like, "Don't the Rams run it up the middle a lot?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they run a lot of duo, and they're really good at it, and they run it every week. So you see it anytime you turn a game on." You guys have really, especially in my 2024 game planning book, studying you guys, you game plan duo every week, 11 personnel mainly, but some 12 too, to really fit the defense you're seeing, and you adjust it pre-snap, post-snap with different motion shifts, alignments. You guys really are masters of duo. What has made it an all-purpose concept for the Rams over the years?
Well, I think one, when you think of duo, particularly for us, and even before I got here, right, for Sean, it's just been a very efficient run. When you look over, since Sean's been a coordinator, typically his squads are in the top third, if you will, in third and manageable situations. And what I mean by that, just, hey, it's 3rd and 6 more than it's 3rd and 8, right? And over 16 or 17 games, that stuff starts to add up, and those numbers, they don't lie to you. So I think that's where duo has been, for Sean, and what I've bought into, or what I believe in is, hey, it's just been a very efficient run. It's a physical downhill run. I think our backs do a good job with it. But to answer your initial question, it's like anything else. It's like what we just said with the pure progressions. We do it a lot. We do it a lot starting in OTAs. You're not pulling or anything like that. So there's not these collisions on, without the pads on and stuff like that. Still physical in terms of the double teams, but when you have the restrictions in OTAs, you can only do so much. So you get all that work there, you get all the training camp work, and by the time you get to the regular season, your guys are just extremely comfortable with, not just the clean looks, but also the nuances of some of the issues that arise, whether it be the perimeter or, from the inside.
Yeah, no, and then it's something to studying tape, not necessarily to the Rams, but obviously I see it a lot with you guys over the years too, is that weak side defensive end stunt, where they'll stunt the weak defensive end into that open B gap on the weak side to try to push to try to collapse duo, basically, and even more so mid zone. Is that something you guys have seen a lot in the last couple of years, and how do you try to combat that specific stunt?
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret. Like, if you're running up the middle, defenses are going to say, let's chop it up inside, whether it be with the fronts or with the pressures or with the stunts. So that's hey, what are they running? What have they been doing? I thought we did a great job of having some counters last year with some wide zone and stuff like that. But my easy elementary answer to it is, if you want to bring all the inside stunts, whether it be pressures, all that, then we have 3 things that we can do. We can handle the pressure, we can run around the pressure, or you can say, hey, if they're going to bring some of these type of things in stunts, now it hurts their pass rush ever so slightly. Hey, now the pass game should be a little bit better in theory, because you don't have to block a guy screaming up the field.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So this is a topic, one of my favorite drop back, play action, just passing concepts in general is the dagger concept. And for people that are unfamiliar specifically with how I group this family together, it's where you got the outside receiver on a dig route, whether it's anywhere from speed release dig cut, anywhere from like 10 to 20 yards. So you got your mini versions, your 5-step versions, your 7-step, which is the more traditional NFL versions people are probably thinking of, and then your play action variations off that too. You especially, I remember when I cut up your 2021 season, I think I had about a 45-minute cut up of the different dagger variations, like the family of concepts that kind of fit into that. So you've got a lot of experience calling it yourself. And then obviously the Rams over the years have just made an absolute killing on it. It's a fun concept, and there's a lot of different things you can do with it. So generally speaking, we'll start with, why is it so popular in the NFL?
Just name the coverage and tell me something that's not, that you're not going to at least have an opportunity to get a completion. It go back to your first question, like for pure progressions. And yeah, you don't want to say 7 steps or pure progressions, but sometimes in the dagger concept, it kind of is, right? I mean, you got your special or deep special, whatever you want to say, your through or deep through. You got your dagger or dover on the outside. Then you got some sort of flat control. I mean, I don't want to call anything simple in this league, but it's a simpler read for the quarterbacks. Even if you're turning your back right there, what scares you a little bit is you're thrown over the middle while turning your back. So, I mean, there's always going to be the positive and negatives with it. But, again, to answer your question, it's just, you got routes on the move, running away from defenders and man, and then you're getting, horizontal and vertical spacing versus zone coverages. And again, you drop on out of there, then you're always going to have some sort of flat control, whether it be from the back on that side, whether it be a chip from a tight end or even a receiver, that we saw like Jay Witt last year, Jordan Whittington versus Chicago catch 2 shallows coming from the opposite opposite side, so you just kind of keep painting that picture and then have the illusion of complexity in terms of, wow, it looks like they're doing a bunch of stuff, but really they're just doing the same stuff over and over. They're just finding different ways to get to those spots.
Now, I'm sure there's going to be maybe a little redundancy with this question in your answer, but I think there's definitely other places you can take it to. Like so when you're calling it or game planning a variation, what are you trying to accomplish? And when you've got your different variations, because I mean, just watching, you guys and anybody on tape, like you talked about, there's different types of flat control, right? Whether you got the grab route, you got maybe even an underneath option route or a shallow coming from the other side or something of that sort. And then you're talking about that middle route, right? The vertical element of it where, you're either running something, on the same side at the, just crossing the near safety space, or if you're trying to like make it look more like a high cross where you're working across the field too. I guess when you call a variation, what are you trying to accomplish with it?
I mean, that's kind of a loaded question because it's like, who are we going against and what have we put on tape already, right? Sometimes you're just changing things up to change things up because of what you've already put on tapes. I've already ran some sort of dagger concept. Okay, now what kind of cuts can we have off that same look? Because that's what they're probably practicing. But we still want to run dagger. So now let's just change this up. Let's switch release this. Let's have a quick short motion with this one. Let's bring the shallow from the opposite side. But again, continuing to paint the same picture for the quarterbacks. And oh, by the way, I haven't even mentioned, let's make sure our players are in the right spot. Let's make sure you got the right guys running the dagger. You got the right guys running the throughs or the specials that can, push vertical and run away from people in man coverage if it is one of those man coverage. But I think all in all, when you're talking about those type of concepts, like I said, it's that they're on the move type routes outside of your checkdowns for the most part that can run away from man, but also distribute the field horizontally and vertically.
Nice. So going back, to your Jets days or whenever you want to cover this, what's your favorite variation or like something that sticks out in your head that you've called a specific variation for a specific defense or a specific opponent that sticks out to you?
The Jet, and I don't got Sean's memory, man. So
it could be something in the last 2 years too. Just whatever pops in your head.
I got 3 of them. I won't use the last 2. I think I got a decent memory. One, Julio Jones in the playoffs for Green Bay, outside the numbers, play pass. We did it out of 13 personnel, and Matt Ryan just threw the ball up over the middle, and he went frickin' Anthony Edwards on this poor DB. And we all remember it as we're football fans from 2016. You might need to visually see it, but that was as simple as it gets. But again, running out of 13 personnel with a tight end having to be that kind of clear out, if you will, that special, but still get that distribution. I think we had Perkins on that. That one stands out because that was just incredible, and it was in a very critical moment. Cincinnati, Mike White was starting. We're in the third quarter. It was a tight game around midfield, and we set kind of like a 4-strong dagger variation off of our 5-step timing and ended up hitting Elijah Moore over the middle. They just sent in the 4-strong. They ended up kind of busting their coverage because it was something we hadn't put on tape. There ended up being 2 flat control players. The middle hook ended up going with that special, and it opened up this big cavity. Mike White found them, got us inside the 25, ended up scoring, and then ended up winning that game. That was the one that Mike went freaking ham, 39 of 44 for a gazillion yards or whatever in his first start. But that was a cool one. It was great execution by our guys, and they made him pay.
Nice. Well, I'm going to have to go on a mission and find a cut up of that 2016 Falcons one because I'm an absolute sucker for 13 personnel play pass clip. I'm going to have to find that one later.
2016 versus the Packers.
Nice. All right, so something else that Sean McVay over the years, and obviously you've done and used at your other stops too, keepers. So keepers for the layman is, you're faking outside zone or a gap action one way, your quarterback's booting out the other way, and you've got some sort of 3-level stretch. You got a vertical element, you've got, a low cross coming from the other side of the field, and you have some sort of first in the flat, whether it be a slide route, what I call a staff route, which is like a stalk flat, something of the sort that's the first in the flat. Usually that's the tag or the first look for the quarterback too. If you want to learn more about the impressive offense that Mike coordinates out in Los Angeles, you will want to check out Game Planning with the 2024 Los Angeles Rams on Amazon. There, I take you week by week and break down 8 to 10 of my favorite concepts that they run each week. I focus on specific weekly game plan adjustments and one-off plays that might not get focused on in a full manual that I do. In there, I focus on all the different duo variations, their mid-zone variations, the play actions off of them, their impressive inventory of drop back concepts, as well as some of their really creative screen designs to get the ball in the space of hands of players like Puka Nacua. Once again, check out Game Planning with the 2024 Los Angeles Rams on Amazon for more information. when you're game planning a keeper, what's your starting point? Do you look at the coverage? Do you look at the front? Do you look at specific? I guess where do you look?
Can we get the quarterback the edge? That's number one. So the whole point is on keepers and through all the years, how can we get the quarterback the edge? Used to be a little bit easier. Used to be a little bit more four down. Used to be a little bit more hand in the dirt. Used to be a little bit more six technique. So it was a little bit easier. Now, not as easy. You got wider edges. People don't want to get edged on the outside or hit on the outside. So you got to figure out different ways, So, but that's first and foremost. If you can get the quarterback the edge, all right, you have a chance at some sort of play, right? Whether it's him with his feet or him ripping through his progression, if you will. And then the next is, obviously, how am I going to get him the edge? But, what coverages and stuff are you attacking? Like, will the low cross have a chance? Are they heavy quarters? I think a lot of what you're seeing now and why you're not seeing as many keepers is, again, because of what I just said with the edge issues, but also with all the shell. I think there's an article written about that like 4 years ago about Vic Fangio stopping them and all those kind of things. And they do a great job. So how can we alleviate that? If you're going to pack it on inside the numbers, can we, open up some of the outside stuff or at least still some of the slides and skates that we have? But, so then that's kind of your next element of it. And then sometimes, like I said, sometimes don't overthink it. You just, hey, can we get him the edge? And then let's just pair it with one of our run plays that we have in the game plan. So we're going to run that run play. So let's just make sure it's, hey, is there the marriage of the run and the pass game? That might be the reason. Might not be the best reason, but it might be the reason. And, I know when offensive line hear that term of keeper, whatever that term is for the 32 teams, they get a smile on their face because it's a little bit easier than blocking a guy in drop back pass protection on a 1st and 10.
For sure. Yeah, there's a couple of things I want to build on that. When I was working on the, your guys' 2024 game planning book, I loved all the different keeper variations. Obviously, Sean's done a great job with it for years, but I thought this past year, you guys did a really good job. One of the Seattle games sticks out to me. I think I had 4 or 5 diagrammed in that section. And then there were a few, I thought you guys did a really good job specifically of isolating the number one receiver. Teams will dabble with it here and there. Like when I studied the 21 Browns, they did it a bit, but I thought you guys really took that to the next level. I thought there was one clip, you could maybe help me out with what week it was, where you guys hit the outside receiver on a squirrel route. So like an out, up and out. It might've been Buffalo.
You know too much, man. You give away all our secrets. I know people can watch tape, but we isolated it was Buffalo, it was the 2-2.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, watch the tape and, I'm just writing on what I see, but yeah, no, that one, I included that one in the 24 game planning book. That was just a cool one, right? If you're getting one-on-one, you got to be able to take that, right? Some of the ways you talked about, especially with quarters, is that safety, that field safety can help take away that low cross. So, okay, you do that, you got to make the defense pay. You got to, be able to leverage and win a one-on-one on the outside then. And then when you talk about getting the edge for the quarterback, something I found really interesting when I was writing the 2023 Ravens manual was the different ways they got the edge for Lamar in their keeper packages. They used off-ball tight ends, that were flexed out. They would short motion them into pin, against some of those wide 9 looks. And then they did a few other things too that is escaping my mind right now. But yeah, that's something that I've seen, even in the last year and a half, 2 years, NFL teams have done a better job of trying to adapt to that too.
And it's no shot at Monk because he does a great job. But when you're pinning and you have Lamar, you can get around that edge a little easier. When you pin and you don't have some of that speed getting around the edge, they fight pressure with pressure. So you got to be, selective when you're deciding if I'm going to use that kind of mechanism. And a lot of teams do. We use it, but you just gotta be very selective with it. And like I said, the whole point to the first question was, how do you, what's the first thing you look for? How do I get the edge? Monk does it with those, and it's a great way.
No, and I think it's, and I talk about it in the book too, but I think it specifically fits Lamar's skill set even better too, to your point, because with a guy like that you guys have with Stafford, or most NFL quarterbacks, that slam flat or delay route or whatever you want to call it, right? Whether it's a slot receiver or a tight end is going to protect that C gap for like 6 hard steps and then kind of, retrace back in case the end man of the line of scrimmage, if you got a 6 technique chases the quarterback as kind of the outlet there. Well, if you got Lamar, you don't need to necessarily give him the option to kind of throw that route back. Let's just have him run it, right? So if we can ensure we're pinning the end man of the line of scrimmage and he can get around it, that's number one less thing for him to worry about and read. But number 2, now we're getting Lamar running downhill with the football when you got flat and hook defenders expanding with the low cross and first and the flat routes too. So I think to your point, I think that fits really well what Lamar's skill set, but
no doubt.
All right, so going back to a little bit further in the memory bank here, so we'll test your memory on this one. The 2019 49ers team. So this was one of my favorite offenses to study. Obviously, you were intimately involved with the construction of that offense. What was your favorite game plan from that season? Because I felt like each week you guys did a great job of, I mean, obviously you guys do this every week and you try to do it every week, but adjusting your game plan every week for what you were seeing, but also, expanding your base concepts and your base packages too. Do you have a favorite game plan from that season?
Yeah, Green Bay in the playoffs, we threw the ball 8 times. Jimmy was 6 for 8 for 77 yards, I think, or 88 yards, something like that. That was great as the pass game coordinator. He just kept handing it off, and we ran for 300 and some yards or whatever it was, and had a heck of a day. It was light work from a pass game, but no, and honestly, I mean, I think anyone that's called plays or whatever, and we get the run game going, I mean, man, how awesome is that? And to be able to do it in that. No, what pops? What's the first that pop into my mind? The Seattle game up there in week what would be 7. It was a 16 game season at that time, but week 17, the winner was going to take that division and get the bye, and that was the one where Dre Greenlaw stopped him at the inch-yard line, and just an incredible play. What a back and forth game, but from an offensive perspective, it was cool. I thought, Kyle and Mike and everyone that's involved did an awesome job of getting that plan together. Mike with the run game and all that. So the run game was great, but some of our pass game, it was kind of cool because we almost went back to the archive a little bit, in terms of, okay, defenses are evolving, but it kind of felt like, man, some of the stuff that we've done, back in 2016 versus some or even 17, looks like some of that's maybe back because we haven't done it since that time, and they're not practicing in it. So there was some old school core concepts, whether it be play pass or some of the quick hitters that were really open that day, and our guys executed it, and Jimmy played great. And so that was one that came to mind. New Orleans is a good one, but I mean, that was just ballers making baller plays. We went in there and won 45-42 or something like that. That was just crazy. I don't even really remember that one. And then the last one I'll say is the Cardinals on Thursday night. That was a cool one. Jimmy played great, but I thought the ball just got distributed so many different spots, and that's key and critical, right? Not overfeeding anyone right there. We just traded for Emmanuel Sanders. He ended up having a big day that day on a Thursday night, and Jim, like I said, had 4 touchdowns and had a big cover 0 where he was able to kind of sit in the back foot, hit a corner out to Dante Pettis for a touchdown. That was what was key in that game. So that was a fun season, like you said. So many freaking good coaches with Kyle and Mike McDaniel, John Benton, and Chris Furster, and just John Embry, Bobby Turner. I mean, it's a loaded staff of knowledge and guys. And then, oh, by the way, no matter how loaded you are as a staff, in my opinion, the players are going to take over. And we had some freaking great players, and it was a fun year. Wish we would finish it out.
Yeah, no, certainly. That Packers one, I remember obviously watching it live and then studying it. I mean, a lot of teams, one of the hot topics and studies right now are run plays on third downs. I think especially with people going for it more and more on fourth down, like the Lions, Ben Johnson, he's one that stuck out to me just because I've studied his offense and written about him extensively too, is these different run concepts on third downs. And I remember that game against Green Bay. I think there was one, I think you guys scored on a third. I think it was like a third and 4, 3rd and 5, and like the high red zone on like a long trap variation, I want to say, where
3rd and 8 and around the 40 something yard line, like 40-yard line.
Oh wow, okay.
Mostert went, because then we were kind of in that 4-down territory right there. That's when it was really starting to take, hold in terms of going for it and kind of that money zone, if you will, what we called it there in San Francisco. And Kyle called it trap. The front was all jacked up on defense, which a lot of times it is on those 3rd and 8s, and guys just went out and executed, and Mostert was ripped right through it for a 40-yard touchdown. That really opened up the game.
Yeah, no, I mean, thinking about it now, like taking a step back, like that particular play too, right? Like you said, I can't remember if it was a mug front or if it was just like a 5-down look where they had a couple of the backers standing up. I can't remember if it was 5-down or a full 6-down mug look, but yeah, like to your point, when you're getting these crazy fronts and blitz pressure paths on third downs, you got to be able to run the ball against it. That's a great way to kind of get around it and not put your quarterback in a super tough position on a 3rd and 8. So that was one of the first examples I remember of it. But all right, Mike, well, we can wrap this up. I sincerely appreciate your time on this, and good luck this year.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Bobby. Good seeing you, man. See ya.
Thank you for listening to Alert the Post on the Coach and Coordinator Network. If you want more Alert the Post content, check me out on X at B_Peters12. Or for more long-form content, check out my Substack at alertthepost.com. There you'll find weekly articles, sections from my books, full complete season breakdowns, and at least once a week I post a full season cut-up for subscribers on alertthepost.com.